Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's video, Anthony Power and I are going to be attempting to answer the question, when should you be selling your Bitcoin mining stocks? As a lot of these companies are now hitting fresh 52-week highs, we wanted to go through a few different exit strategies, talk about some of our own personal experiences, and the best ways that we've found to ensure you lock in profits on your trades. Now, before we get into all that, please take a second, hit the like button, you guys. It's a huge help to myself, the channel, and Anthony. It also gets this content to other people like you who may find value. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. And let me know in the comment section below what you think of our various different exit strategies, which of the miners you're currently holding, and what your plan is to lock in profits in 2024 and beyond. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, you've got Anthony Power and I attempting to answer the question, when is the best time to sell your stocks? Particularly in this video, Bitcoin mining companies or Bitcoin mining stocks, as that's what we focus on and talk about. So Anthony, a very difficult question, but one that we've been asked a lot. I know in your Patreon group, this is coming up, in the video comments, on Twitter or X. This is one we get a lot. So looking forward to this discussion. How do you think we can do here?
This is it's a good question. Everyone has a different way of looking at it from a strategy point of view. I'll be different from everybody else. I don't have any sort of like technical analysis I follow. There are these people that do that, and I don't want to take away from them what they do. I look at fundamentals. I look at the mining stocks. I've been in this space for 3 years, so I think I've got a little bit of a picture of where the value is, and hopefully my decisions now are better than they were maybe 3 years ago when I was coming into this space, because we went through a bear market, and a lot of people are still probably trying to recover from that bear market with some of the stocks out there. But it's interesting. Happy to sort of talk through what I do. But yeah, it's going to be a good conversation.
Most definitely, and I'm glad you brought up fundamental versus technical analysis. One of the accounts I'm going to reference here does a lot of great technical analysis as well. I tend to veer away from that and go more fundamental, similar with Anthony, but we're each going to share our own exit strategies for the upcoming bull run, and we're going to talk about some additional options or techniques that you may want to deploy to ensure you lock in those profits. So first things first, Anthony, I guess timing for this video is great, as a lot of these companies are now starting to come up on fresh 52-week highs. The Bitcoin breakout, the ETF, a lot of the themes we've been talking about are starting to play out. Now, if you search, when should I sell my stocks on Google? Funny enough, you're going to get 7 answers, Anthony. So the first one, when you found something better, if you've made a mistake, I think all of us have been in that situation before. Business outlook has changed. So you think about some of the news we've talked about on the channel recently with some of these miners. That's definitely a point to think about for a few of these. Tax reasons, obviously, Anthony. We've seen even some of our dear CEO friends having to sell for tax reasons. And then you get into some of the more, I guess, relevant ones to this conversation. So if the valuation no longer reflects the business reality, maybe the stocks run up a little bit too far, too fast, you need the money, is always a good reason to sell. And then the 7th reason, and hopefully what I want to focus on today, Anthony, the stock has gone up and you're looking at cash profits. So there's a couple of different options out there. We're going to focus on the latter ones there, you guys. And one thing I did want to bring up out of the gate here, especially with these miners, a lot of us are really looking for the home run, to hit it out of the park, to get the 10x, the 20x. But if you look at the rule of 72 and a lot of well-known theories out there in terms of selling or exiting stocks, you actually only need a couple, in the example here, 3, 24, 25% gains to double your money. So the rule of 72, Anthony, you take 72, you divide it by whatever return you get, and that'll tell you how many times you need that return in order to double your money. So in this situation, 72 divided by 24 is 3. And the point I make there, you guys, is a lot of times we get so fixated on that end milestone or goal, which we're going to talk about in a second here as it relates to the price of Bitcoin. For example, Bitcoin hitting 100,000, 200,000 US, that we forget to lock in profits along the way. And the point I'm trying to make here is you can never go broke taking a profit. And in a lot of situations, as we've seen in the Bitcoin space with the volatility, there's a lot of options or chances to lock in a 10, 15, 20% profit along the way, which I know we've both been doing as well, Anthony. So I'll pause there. Before we get into your trade strategy, what are your thoughts on these 7 exits? Have you ever made a mistake, Anthony? And have you ever sold for any of these reasons?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly transparent. I've made some mistakes in that 2021 bull cycle. I think a lot of people bought miners expecting when Bitcoin price got to 69,000, it would just keep going. And literally when it reached that target towards, I think it was like November 2021, for the next 13, 14 months, all we did was see the Bitcoin price drop. And we have to remember, all these stocks that we talk about are correlated to the Bitcoin price effectively. So if the Bitcoin price, is rising, and we're seeing that at the moment, then, you'd expect the mining stocks to follow that. Although I will say, last year in 2023, if we looked at the miner performance last year, they outperformed Bitcoin significantly. So we had probably an average of about 400 or 500% increases in mining stocks. Bear in mind, the mining stocks had been beaten down at the end of 2022, so there was only one way to really go from there. But an average return, 400 to 500% across all the sort of like the mid to large mining caps, was attainable. The Bitcoin price itself in 2023 went up by 155%. Now we're already now just past halfway in February. So if we now revert back to the last year, so this is like not counting the first sort of 7 weeks of 2023, the average for these mining stocks is round about 100% up. So, we just said for 2023 itself, average of about 400 or 500%. But we've seen the mining stocks come off their highs from from December, I think late December, 29th of December, that some of these mining stocks reached some real highs. And since that period, a lot of the mining stocks have come off. And, even, 30, 40% down in year to date for some of these mining stocks. So, and the Bitcoin price is up 15% from the start of the year. So, we have to be very careful. But you're quite right. We tend to focus on the fundamentals, and the fundamentals of these companies now, we're seeing that sort of the change in some of these mining stocks, because, when you come into a space 3 or 4 years ago, you're learning from day one. But now, after 3 years, and we can see that these mining companies are, growing. Some are growing exponentially quicker than others. Some have, managed to build up those cash reserves and able to look for opportunities that come up. Other miners haven't been able to do that and are still sort of like, effectively at the same hash rate they were probably 12, 18 months ago. And that's the challenge. But we are seeing now, we can sort of differentiate to a certain extent between, miners and evaluation. Now, you could argue, CleanSpark's had a really good run, and, their market capitalization as we speak today is, it's over 3 billion. And so, we're only talking in November when it had reached 1 billion for the first time. And now two and a half months later, it's into 3 billion. But what does that mean for the hash rate they've got deployed at the moment? I mean, they've got 14 and a half exahash deployed at the moment. They're putting machines in as we speak. But if you look at their market cap and then look at that amount of deployed hash rate, you're getting a sort of like a $217,000 for every petahash that they have. And when you compare that to other miners, that's quite high. So, that value perspective there does put, makes you think then about, are people, should people be taking some sort of, profits in CleanSpark because of the valuation at the moment compared to other peer miners. But it is a challenge. You've got to, go through and look at the fundamentals, look at the price of Bitcoin. I mean, we don't know the price is going to be tomorrow, but we know at the moment that this 50, 51, 52,000 has been holding for a while. The influx of more of these ETFs are buying Bitcoin daily basis and breaking all records that way. So, the law of economics states that, when there is a demand for an asset that there's not as much supply for, then the price will go up. So there is an expectation Bitcoin price could rise again. But we've seen in the past that, it does pull off. And as soon as Bitcoin price, drops ever so slightly, the Bitcoin mining stocks equally have a bigger volatility in their falls than the Bitcoin price itself. So it can be a real challenge out there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up CleanSpark because it's one we've seen grow tremendously in terms of exahash and market cap this year. But the question is sound, Anthony. How do you value these? And we've really seen the industry as a whole mature. We've seen the analyst community mature, and we're starting to get a better understanding of how to value these companies. But as we just saw with NVIDIA earnings last night, even the biggest companies in the world with the most analyst coverage, they can't seem to get it exactly right. And that's why you see NVIDIA stock pumping 10, 12% today. So my question now is, Anthony, Bitcoin price, you're 100% right. We cannot predict the future, you guys. This is not financial advice. I have two balls. Neither one of them are crystal, and I cannot tell you what the Bitcoin price will be tomorrow or the next day. But you're starting to see a lot of these predictions, I guess, come up on Twitter or X. So I've brought a few of these along, Anthony, to show the community here, and then we'll get into our own exit strategies because I know you've been taking some profits recently and posting that actually in your Patreon as well. So I'll bring these up on the screen. The first one, Tom Lee, this is a business icon. He's estimating $150,000 US Bitcoin price by the end of 2024. So extremely bullish, you guys. The next one we have is Robert Kiyosaki, the famous author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This was one of the first investment books I read. He's predicting $100,000 US by June. So even sooner here, only a couple months out. And then the technical analysis account that I referred to earlier, Freedom by 40. This guy's great if you're looking for strong technical analysis, really well explained, documented trades. He's estimating anywhere from 80 on the bear case to $250,000 US for the price of Bitcoin in this bull run. So I like what he's done here, kind of lay out a bull case, a bear case, a reasonable case. But the question here is, Anthony, none of us have any idea how high Bitcoin is going. We know the Bitcoin mining companies are pegged to Bitcoin, a lot of times exponentially. So the question stands, when is the best time to lock in profits and exit these trades, knowing that Bitcoin could, in theory, go all the way up to 80, 100, 200, $250,000 in this cycle? It definitely gets a little bit daunting. So let's kick it off with you, Anthony. I know you've been taking some profits over the last few months. What is your strategy? How do you go about making those decisions, and how can people access that info?
Well, for accessing the info, I've been sharing my trades on my Patreon site. I don't put it on other social media, don't make it public that way, but people on the Patreon site who are willing to support the channel, then they get access to my trades. And looking at the last 14 months, because I put all the trades back through to January 2023, there's around about 70 trades of purchase of sales. And on the sales side, there's probably less than 10. So, you know, I do sort of like more regularly buy some shares. And I'll look at, you know, where I believe there's value, and there's maybe some, you know, news story that's come out that's given me an indication to think that that's going to have some sort of effect on the share price. Or sometimes, you know, we talk about this volatility of the mining stocks, and, you know, they can, you know, we can see these increases 20-30% in one day up and down. And sometimes you can see the volatility down where you think actually there's so much taken off the price today that there might be some value there now, and to go in and buy stocks. I mean, we're going to get to the stage where it's going to be 24/7 market's going to be open. I think they're already going to be trialing that now. We've literally got a market day now around about sort of, you know, well over 12 hours. I think 3 or 4 hours either side of the normal trading day. And I think that's going 24/7 on some exchanges. So that gives people all around the world the opportunity to sort of like, you know, to buy stocks and trade stocks. But from my perspective, 2021, I did make some very, very quick profits on a number of stocks in the early part of that year. And then I thought some of these stocks would carry on when they dropped a bit, carried on. And I sort of like rebought some of these stocks back, and I've been sort of like held with a couple of them for a couple of years now. And sort of, you know, on those particular stocks, you know, a little bit of red there at the moment. And whether I'll recover that, I don't know. But This last 14, 15 months, I've been a lot more selective on what I've been purchasing. I've looked at value. I've looked at my analysis, so I'm trying to, actually use my analysis that I'm doing to sort of determine which stocks I've been buying. And I have got, a fair cross section, which are all highlighted. But I sold stocks in December, and a couple of positions in December where I thought, I reached a point where, I was able to take some profits. And, I didn't take profits like, I wasn't making 400, 500% last year, but I made profits, enough for me to sort of warrant taking some off the table and having some for if the price came back down again. And the price on some of these stocks did come back down again in January, and I had some money there to go and buy back in. These stocks I did sell were fundamentally good stocks, but it's just that, we've seen some rapid increase in prices, then a little bit of a pullback, and, gave me an opportunity to buy in again. And sometimes, even around when news results are going to come out, like earnings results, and anticipating earnings results and what you expect the company to do, because you're seeing all the information come out in monthly updates, so you can pretty much gather most of the news that's going to come in that earnings report anyway, because you've been following closely. Making decisions to buy before the earnings results physically get released, and then, what's the impact of the earnings results, and then buying back. So that's been quite fruitful the last few weeks with some of the miners already now reporting. So, but I've been taking some small profits, and as I say, it doesn't hurt to take a profit. You don't have to wait for a stock to go 500% before you start selling. You can take some profits on the way up there, and it's just a case of learning a strategy that fits with yourself. Bear in mind, when I started, 3 or 4 years ago in this space, I'd been buying some banking stocks, that were fundamentally fine, and looking for sort of 4 or 5% returns. Some of these mining stocks can turn 4 or 5% in an hour. So you have to pick the right stocks, but equally they can go down, and you've got to do your due diligence. You've got to do some understanding, review, due diligence. Learn from what the market's telling you, and everything can happen with these stocks on a minute by minute basis. But yeah, it's there's a lot of work involved, but it doesn't hurt to take small profits as the price goes up, and give yourself some some money on the side there for things that happen when the stock price drops. And we believe if you, as you alluded to in your conversation, if the Bitcoin price does get to some of these targets that some of these analysts are saying, then the mining stocks will follow that, because the mining stocks are correlated to Bitcoin price. And we get to 100,000, 150,000, that will impact revenues, that will impact margins, that's profits. The stock market likes that, and therefore the price will reflect that.
Yeah, it's so funny. I used to invest in banking, and I still do in my more conservative pension accounts. But target was 4 or 5% return or dividend in a year, and now these stocks move like that in an hour, like you say. And that volatility, Anthony, I used to think Bitcoin was awesome because it traded 24 hours a day, 365. But I've now realized it's actually nice to have the trading account closed and have a bit of a weekend. And now I'm checking my phone at all hours, as you guys know. The other thing I wanted to mention there, Anthony, you brought up a really interesting strategy about these kind of swing trades. And I know you and I have been bouncing some ideas back and forth. Generally, both of us are long-term fundamental buy and hold investors for the vast majority of our portfolio. But both of us have been peeling off a percentage of our shares that we've been really swing trading. And I know from a technical standpoint, I really like to use the RSI, Relative Strength Index, oversold, overbought, to help guide some of those, again, small portion of my overall portfolio swing trades. But like you say, they have been lucrative. And a lot of times, if a company runs 30, 40, 50, 70% in a week, maybe you want to shave a little profit there. Now, in terms of my strategy here, Anthony, I'm curious to get your thoughts and the subscriber thoughts. So Bitcoin, as we know, is on a 4-year halving cycle. It's been very well documented how the price moves throughout this cycle. I'll bring up a graph on the screen here, but there's hundreds of these out on the internet, you guys. And as you can see on here, the red lines are the halving dates. The yellow line is the orange line, I guess, is the Bitcoin price. And it's very clear to see generally Bitcoin price bottoms in between halvings and then hits a peak or a top about 4-6 months after halving. And that's kind of what we've seen over the last few cycles. This is only the fourth halving event. So again, we don't have a ton of data, but so far that's what we're seeing. And if we take that even a step further and we overlay some information around the timing between trough to peak or the bottom of the cycle to the top, you can actually see a fairly stable pattern recurring here. So if we extend that theory out now, Anthony, we start looking at some of these analyst price targets, it's really telling us that Bitcoin should peak towards the back half of this year or early next year. Now, the question in my mind is if everybody's aware of this, it's well documented, all these people are publishing this information, are people going to start to front load this activity like we see each year with the tax loss selling, like we saw with the ETF approval? So my personal strategy here, you guys, is I think Bitcoin is going to be on a big run, but I want to ensure that I'm a little bit ahead of the pack. So my personal perspective here, I'm about 20% of my portfolio is actual Bitcoin, 80% is Bitcoin miners within this space. I'm going to start locking in profits around $100,000 US. Now I want to be closer to the front end of this wave, so I may actually start around the $95,000 US mark. I'm based in Canada. It's about a 1.34 exchange. So you're looking in the neighborhood of about $125,000 Canadian. Now, I haven't perfected this strategy yet, which is good because we're not at $100,000 US. But my goal, Anthony, is to sell in the neighborhood of about 20% of my portfolio or positions every time Bitcoin appreciates $25,000, starting at 95. And again, the reason I'm starting at 95 is just to be a little bit ahead of that curve or selling pressure that I anticipate when we hit 100,000, if we hit 100,000. So sell 20% at 95 US, sell 20% at 120 US, 20% at 145, so on and so forth. Really enabling me to always keep 80% of my position invested, but taking profits along the way. Now, this is a little bit unique because Bitcoin is pegged so closely, or the Bitcoin miners, are pegged so closely to the price of Bitcoin, and because my conviction in this Bitcoin bull cycle is so strong. But I'm curious, Anthony, how does that compare to your strategy, and what do you think of that timing and structured approach to ensure that I'm selling, I guess, on logic rather than on emotion?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good approach. It's a managed approach. It's a planned approach. So all you've got to do is wait for your profits to reach that level, and it's an automatic sell. I would say mine's less structured than that. So I will look on a daily basis at as to where I believe price is going to go over the next week or so, and determine when the sales. But I've only made probably 8 or 9 sales in the last sort of 14-15 months. So it's not a great deal of sales. It's been a few sales in the last sort of 6 weeks. So as we saw these prices get to a position where it could take profits. But I also took profits in the middle of last year as well, when a couple of the miners really peaked. And so it's not as structured, but it was a case of, and some of those miners, if I'd have kept the money in there, it would have grown further. But actually, it doesn't hurt sometimes to take a profit. And, I've moved from company to company where I felt that, there was some more value in another company because one company had done a share price had gone really well, and was able to take some profits off the table there and reinvest it in another company where there's potential. And that's worked quite well for me. So, it's both good strategies. It's learning from 2021 that is the key thing, because people just expected the Bitcoin price to reach 100,000, and those that were following Plan B at the time, his graphs, and he still thinks that the Bitcoin price is going to continue to increase. And many analysts out there believe the Bitcoin price will significantly increase post halving, and every cycle we've seen that. But actually, with these mining stocks, they're not just going in a straight line every day. There is volatility. So, we looked at, even if we just go back to the results of Iris Energy last week, or Iron as they're now formally called. I think before the actual results came out, the share price was around about $8.50, $8.60. And then that sort of 2 hours when those results came out, the volatility was absolutely bizarre. I mean, the share price dropped to close to $5 So, and I'd actually had some orders in there around about the $5.50, on a wing and a prayer, thinking I'll never get those, and actually they were filled. So, not a great amount, but actually, I was able to, increase my holding in iron on the sake of that sheer volatility. It doesn't happen. That doesn't happen normally. Maybe it's just the results there of that, but I wasn't expecting anywhere near that level, because it went from down to $5.20, $5.30, back up to $7.70 in literally minutes. And so, the very brave people out there who managed to get in an order very early could have had another 40% profit on the day of earnings. So, that's the volatility we've got. These stocks are going to move when news comes out. And it's still we've got to remember, we're still in its infancy, this actual sector. These public miners, the oldest public miner, which I believe is Hive Digital, has been public for about 6 years. So there's not like a mountain of information that we can glean from performance. We haven't got that much performance. We talked about CleanSpark; they've been going like less than half that time. So as a Bitcoin miner, I mean, they were an energy company before that, and TeraWulf, again, an energy company before they were Bitcoin miners. So, they're not all new companies, but they're new to the sector. And so, the likes of HUT, the likes of Bitfarms and Hive, the three Canadian miners, they were the first three to really go public. And so, that was like 6 years ago. So still in the infancy, still haven't got, a lot of data to work from. Bitcoin itself, 15-year anniversary was recently. So, again, we haven't got a lot of data on Bitcoin to work with. But we've got these cycles, and people say this cycle's different from the last cycle. Well, I think they said that the last cycle. So it'd be interesting to see what happens post-halving. But when supply goes down by 50%, and these ETF companies are still buying in at the same rate they're buying now, or buying in January through to the last few weeks of February, significant amounts, and if that continues, where they're going to buy them from, the price will go up to try and attract people to sell Bitcoin for them to fill their orders. So I think there's potential room for these mining stocks to do well in the next 18 months through this start of this bull cycle, but I will be certainly looking to sort of like take profits as we go through the process. And not make some of the mistakes that people made, and I'll include myself in that, in 2021.
The most dangerous words in the world, Anthony. This time will be different, right? And what I've learned in my experience, you guys, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've lost a lot of money. I've had some good trades too. But generally for me, I treat my account like a bar of soap. The less I touch it, the more I have, right? But I do like your strategy about some of these swing trades. I do agree, you guys, look for opportunity, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. The market tends to overreact ditch to ditch, whether it's good news or bad news, and there are opportunities to be found out there. Now, we'd be super curious to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. What is your exit strategy for this bull run? Where do you think Bitcoin is going to top out here in this cycle? And how are you going to ensure you lock in profits to avoid, I think, what a lot of us did in 2021, Anthony, both of us included. So super curious to hear that, you guys. If you're still watching, leave a comment, hit the like button. It's a huge help to the channel, myself. It's free to do, and it gets this video and content to other people who may find value. If you're not subscribed to the channel, McNallie Money, Patreon, Anthony's got his linked below, mine as well. It's more of a trade journal. Anthony's got a lot more content and analysis in there. That's all for today, you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Anthony, I'll let you have any closing thoughts, and we'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, as I say, do your due diligence, research, check these companies out, understand where they're growing. A lot of these companies now buying these new machines in to get their efficiency rate down. What does that mean for mining? It means they can mine using less electricity, reduce the costs going into the halving. Who's doing that? Who's growing, who's buying new machines, who's looking to grow at the level that the Bitcoin global hash rate is growing. And we've seen that grow, from 250 at the start of January to well over 600 at the moment. So, take your time to do it. Don't invest more than you need to. What I invest in these stocks is a small amount of my whole portfolio. And so it's not like it will be the end if Bitcoin price went to zero. But be prepared for for any eventuality. It's good to do some research. There's plenty of information out there. Make sure you do your own due diligence before you make any decisions to buy. And as I say, this video that me and Bryce are doing today is not financial advice. This is just purely talking about our strategies, and they may not be the same strategies that you want to employ yourself.
I love it. Okay, Anthony, great discussion. We'll see you tomorrow.